Hi, and welcome to the Route to CISO podcast. It's me, Chris Rides. I'm going to be your host, and I'm going to be chatting to seasoned Chief Information Security Officers about their career journeys. We're going to be unencrypting their real-life stories and searching for the hidden keys to help you fast-track your cybersecurity career. Welcome back to part 2 of our interview with Chris Carter on the Route to CISO podcast. Let's dive right in.
And like one of the things I do, I was again talking to one of my my coach earlier this week, and he was saying, you do a lot of good things, but how do you monetize it? I'm like, I don't want to monetize it. I just want to, be able to provide support to the community. There are a lot of people out there who are struggling, and I usually go with the underdogs, someone who's looking for a job. I'm sure he is not going to have the money to pay me for it, right? On the other hand, I've had CEOs and CTOs reach out to me, and in some cases, they're just looking for advice on how to push the security program, how to work with their CISO. And in some cases, I just don't see the need to charge right now. Perhaps it's a business model, but right now, I think it's all about growing the community, building a legacy, and ensuring that we're all supporting each other.
Yeah, 100%. That's kind of one of the drivers for me to do this, and I'm sure one of the drivers for you to do your LinkedIn Live and talk about that. It's like, how do you get the message out to as many people as possible? Because I'd like, if I could, I would do that. If I won the lottery tomorrow, I would still be doing this, right? I wouldn't have to worry about a lot of the other stuff that I have to do that does pay my mortgage and the car bills and the gas and the food and everything else that we have to pay for. I'd still be doing this stuff because I love it. I love the people that I speak to, and I feel like it's making a difference. And my 5-year-old at some point will be like, what does daddy do? And will probably look on YouTube and think that I interview people about being a CISO, and that's how we pay the bills. That's not quite how it works, but at least it's like you talked about creating a legacy. I feel like that's almost what we do. And when we talk about this sort of stuff and it's out there in the public forum, we create a legacy for a lot of people, when they see it and reach out. So yeah, that's amazing. Well, the thing I think I found that you mentioned that I found also quite interesting was you talked about being laid off, and over the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of people laid off in our industry, a lot of people impacted. I've seen people that have been quite staunch about, right, this is the type of job I want to do, and this is the location, and this is what I must be paid, and that's great. And some people I've said to them, I think you're going to have to be more flexible because that's not what the market is right now. And other people, I think they're being flexible and they've got realistic expectations. I think the key is that there's a lot of people worried about having to take steps back or steps to the side, rather than a step forward, and that's quite challenging for them to get their head round. Do you think, if you look at your career, there's any times that you've had to do those things, and you've got sort of impactful stories about the times you've had to do that and how that's affected you in your career?
Yeah, it's interesting you asked that question. I had a mentor once, and I was at Zurich at the time, and we had the same conversation. And what he said was, your career is like an S, right? You see an S, it kind of goes like, or he says an S, it goes like that. So sometimes you're going this way, and you have to go back that way in order to go that way. So my recommendation or my suggestion or what I'd offer to people is, you always have to think 3 steps ahead. A lot of roles that you're going to be applying for, you will be missing something. And if you look at the bigger picture, sometimes taking a step back means, taking 3 steps forward in your next role. Obviously, as a knowledge worker, someone is there at the company to provide value. Obviously, yes, you provide value and you take home a paycheck, but long term, I would say selfishly, you may have to think strategically. If you're only looking at the next career move, it's you're playing checkers. You should always be playing chess when it comes to your career. Very strategic in how you approach roles.
Yeah.
So I would say yes. In some cases, you may have to take that step back. You may be a senior engineer, but you have no idea how GRC works. Okay, if you get a lesser role in a GRC role, that sets you up nicely because it broadens your horizon. Your horizon. It enables you to make better business decisions, and you're of more value to a prospective employer. So I don't necessarily buy into the, it's kind of a, right? It's like a hockey stick. I
Yeah.
always see it as an S. You have to sometimes go backwards in order to move forward.
Yeah, if I look at most of the, in fact, I'd say I look at every single person I've spoke to on here, every single one of them has a story like that, and some of the times they've taken steps, and people are like scratching their heads. Why would they take that role? Because this is what I thought would be next, but you don't know what's going on. You don't know what that person has planned or what their situation is, and I feel like it's the careers are much more like a game of snakes and ladders, right? You're going to slip on some snakes. Sometimes you want to take that snake, right? Sometimes you want to maybe take a ladder downwards to get across a bit
Right.
more, to take another ladder that pushes you up further upwards, right? So um yeah, I feel like that's the case with most careers, and that's why something I consistently talk about on here, because I kind of want to drill it in there. If enough people hear that, then hopefully when they're in situations where they need to take a bit of a backward step and look at the broader picture, they'll do that, rather than,
Right.
sometimes we make snap decisions. No, that's not right for me, that's not right, when instead of
And
having a step back and, right, what's the deal. So right, that's good. You talked a lot about mentors and mentorship and being a mentor and having mentors and coaches. If you look at, and you can mention some of your mentors here, but if you look at some of the CISOs that are doing what you think a really good job, what, first off, if you want to name check them, you absolutely can. Some people do, some people don't. It's up to you. Um, but then I'm going to ask you, like, what is it that they bring to the table? What are the things they're doing that make them so good?
yeah, so I mean, I was just recently at Black Hat, me at Black Hat, so Middle East Africa Black Hat, and
Right.
I, I met Gary Hayslip, and I said, Gary, you have no idea who I am, but I know you. I'm one of your mentees. And he looked at me, and we had an opportunity to spend a lot of time together. We call each other brothers now. So Gary is just an incredible human being. The humility with which he approaches his craft, the passion, is just something that. So yeah, I'm calling Gary out. Another person that I'm calling out, I think, is Alan Alford.
Yeah.
He's recently got a CISO role. I was just in Dallas a couple weeks ago. I made sure that, hey, Alan, can we go meet for coffee? And we had coffee. We talked. Another gentleman who I think is just an incredible human being is a gentleman by the name of Yasser. He's the CISO of Calendly.
Okay.
He's just been and just I remember sitting at the airport. We were in the lounge, and Gary and I think it was Gary and Yasser and another CISO. They were talking, and I just decided to not say anything because they were just the profound knowledge that they were dropping was just amazing. And then there are other folks Larry,
Yeah.
8 time CISO. We've had some stories that he's given me advice. I call him up and we talk. Um, but yeah, there are tons of CISOs that I think they're just doing amazing job. That I don't even want to go down that path because I can think of at least 5 other CISOs who are just incredible human beings, given the task that's in front of them and the humility with which they approach their craft, their availability. I can call one up right now and have a conversation, something I'm struggling with, and of course they call me and we go back and forth. But I think it's again, how do we support each other? How do we ensure that the community has the resilience that it needs? So if, God forbid, a CISO goes down here, the pool of CISOs that are available are, and of course, we have the CISO Society, which is how
Yep.
I got introduced to you. I think, Larry and
Shout out to
J-
Jason. Yep.
Jason, shout out to Jason for doing such an amazing job. And the amount of CISOs that are in that group. I think we're at about 1,300 now and growing. The knowledge, Mr. Wilder, Andrew Wilder, I think is his name.
Yeah.
Just incredible people that sometimes you just read their articles or just meet them in passing. I'm going to a couple of sessions next week with one of my coaches, who is just an incredible person. Keon Williams. He has Class LLC, but the list goes on and on.
You've
Just
named some
sitting on,
great people there. I'm
yeah,
trying to tie down. I'd love to tie down Alan. He is so busy. It's tough. Gary. I recorded Gary's episode only I think last week. So he'll be out probably an episode or a week or two before yours.
yeah,
He's a good guy, and I need to reach out to Yasser. Andrew, actually, I'm recording his Andrew Wilder. I think he's on maybe next week. I'll have to check my calendar, but yeah, I'm trying to get these. I'm listening to everybody that sort of makes these recommendations, and I'm like jotting them
yeah.
down and being like, right, okay, we need to get these people on board.
Yeah, so I don't know if Gary, and he's probably too humble to mention this, but there was an incident on Thanksgiving Day, and he's probably going to kill me for saying this, Alan as well. But we were in Saudi Arabia, Riyadh, and we went to what's called the edge of the earth. So it's literally like a cliff where you would see it used to be an ocean, and you're standing up on, I don't know, like a mile looking down into like a valley. And there was an incident between Gary and Alan, and I was there, and I was, looking back at it now, it's kind of funny. It was a great bonding experience, but it was a very scary moment. I don't want to spoil it for your listeners. Gary may have mentioned it in the podcast, so I don't want to repeat it. But if you don't, I would recommend having that conversation with Alan. And I'm going to see Alan next week, or the week after next. So I'll definitely make sure he gets on the podcast.
Yeah, mention it. I know about it. I think they posted a little bit on LinkedIn, and then I'd spoken to Gary about it before the podcast. I don't think we actually chatted about it, but yeah, it's like not nice injuries, and I'm sure a bonding
Yeah,
experience, but probably not a lot of fun to
very
go
scary
through.
moment. Yeah.
Yeah, scary. Yeah, certainly sounds like it. But yeah, they're good chaps, and I think like that was quite recently, right? In the last was it last month or
Yeah, recently.
something?
In fact, you mentioned Andrew. Andrew, he wasn't there with us, but Andrew and I were in the same speakers lounge. The CEO of Gent, great guy. Didn't get an opportunity to get his information, but we'll definitely, Andrew, if you're out there, reach out to me. I sent you a message on LinkedIn. Answer the message. But no,
I'll tell him
it's
that then. You can say to Alan, and I'll tell Andrew when I speak to him.
yeah,
And then the
yeah,
CISO. Do you know the CISO Jamp? Andy
yeah.
Smeaton. You know Andy?
Andy Smith, and that's what I'm talking about. Andy Smith.
Okay. Oh,
He's
all
a
right.
British chap. He's a
I know
British chap, right?
Andy. I know Andy very well. He's from Liverpool. Yeah, we've spoken a lot prior to taking Jamf and afterwards, and he's doing some stuff as well with Merlin as well. Yeah, he's look, Andy. If you're listening to this, then hopefully you're already booked in because I know Andy really well, and he keeps saying yes, and then we never get these dates sorted. So he's a tough one to track down as well. I'll text him after this. But yeah, I've got his details. I can connect you guys for sure as well.
Okay.
So that's
Yeah.
good. So with all those people, obviously their availability and they're willing to mentor and give up time. I guess like their empathy are kind of attributes. Is there any other like specific attributes you think make them a good CISO, like for companies? You know, other things outside of being a great connection and person for you to be able to rely on. When they're a CISO, what are the things you think they do?
I think that it's the technical chops. You look at someone like Gary, who's written several books.
Yeah.
The last time we spoke, I think he has another book coming out.
Hmm.
Rafiq Rahman is another guy, the CISO mind map. But I think the technical chops is always important. But one of the things that I've always been in awe, one of the things I'm learning myself, is the level of awareness they have, the humility with which they approach their craft. It's incredible. I think, someone like Larry, Again, technical chops, the experience. He's been a CISO 8 times. He started Cybersecurity. He's now on to a different venture. He makes time. He puts out meaningful content. But I think those are all qualities, your technical chops, the experience, the content, giving back to the community, and just being available, right? Being an available resource.
Yeah, you're one of the first people to talk about humility, and I find that really interesting because I feel like the more experienced CISOs and the people that I've known, for a longer time in that level, at that level, they're very humble, right? And you can talk to them about anything, and you don't feel out of your depth, and they bring you into conversations when you're standing there. Don't just leave you, turn their back on you, and start talking to
Right.
somebody else. They're genuinely nice people, and what I think is quite interesting. I've worked, and I definitely won't name names, but I've worked with people. When we started the business in 2012, there were people that I was working with that were managers, maybe team leaders, and some of them are CISOs now. And it's surprising how people change when they get that CISO title. How some people change, I should say, and maybe it's just the first time they get it, and maybe it's as they get more mature and more comfortable with being a CISO, maybe those egos will disappear again. But it is something that I do see as a bit of an issue in some of the communities. Some CISOs really like they believe their own hype,
I won't say any
and
names.
it's
I have a list as well, but I won't say any names.
yeah. I'm sure we have. I bet if we compared the list, it would be a lot of similar people on it, right? I found
Right,
that
right,
those people might not realize it, but there lots of people have lists of who are the people you want to avoid, and they don't realize that they're on there. Probably if they were more
right,
humble, they might realize it, right?
right.
um,
And I may be on that list, so that's one of the things I said. Like, especially I love talking to Yesler and Gary and Alan because it grounds me. The humility with what they know and just their approach. So it's one of the things, people, Maya Angelou, people always remember how you make them feel, not what you say. And I think it's critical that, as a security professionals, we approach our craft that way, just with a level of humility that allows others to breathe, right? Put a lot of oxygen in the room, so to speak, so that people have that psychological safety. And it's amazing the things you learn from just sometimes being quiet, being inquisitive, and engaging with people in ways that are unique to them and refreshing, where they understand that you have a vested interest in their success and what they have to say. So yeah.
Well, I can promise you, Chris, you're not on my list. So there you go. And I don't like, I don't plan to give any air to those people. So you can tell if they're not on here that's also a similar. That could be that they're on the list. Could be also that they're too busy, like people like Alan and Andy. People I want on here, but I can't track them down to get on. Um, but yeah, you're not on my list, and I suspect from talking to you, I don't get the feeling that you would be on anybody's list. So there we go. Well, look, let's dive into a different part. And I always speak to when I speak to CISOs, they've been hiring managers for a long time. In fact, you just talked about having to do a lot of interviews recently, and so a lot of our audience range from like people that are very senior that are trying to get that CISO title, but right the way down to people that are interested in getting into the industry, people that have been laid off, people that are working currently but want to be doing a more cybersecurity focused role. And I think from some of the stuff you've talked about, I think I'm know some of the answers I might get around this. But let's jump into it. Let's start first off with a resume. Like when you get a resume, what's the first thing that you look for on that resume?
Yeah, it's interesting because when I talk to people that I coach and I mentor, I say your resume gets you through the door. Okay, what on your resume that stands out that gets you through the door? It's probably going to be a couple certifications, the CISP, the CISA, the CISM, the C, all these different Cs, and then the progression of your your career path. Um, for some weird reason, if you have a one mistake on your resume, I will find it. If it's
Right.
a spelling error or something, so I think I would say, you know, make good use of spell check. Make sure that your resume, the format, just what the ICs, the first impression is always important. So I would say have a very clean format. Make sure your credentials are what you say they are. One of the things I find out with people who are the younger people who are trying to get into cybersecurity, Splunk, SIM, CrowdStrike, and I say, okay, so you have experience in Splunk. What is the difference between a search head and a forwarder? Well, okay, so you haven't used Splunk. So take that off your resume or go learn about it, right? So I think once you have the resume, make sure that it passes the smell test, right? So if
Yeah.
you're new, if you're coming into the industry, you have 1 year of experience, but your credentials are like 3 inches thick, that's a red flag. I would say be honest. Um, and when we have the conversation, be truthful.
Yeah. Yeah. You're the second person to sort of talk slightly differently, but about the same thing, which is the spelling mistakes. I think somebody else mentioned HIPAA. People would put it with two P's instead of two
Two
A's, and
P's instead of two
yeah,
A's. Yeah.
yeah. Or you know, I was just waiting for an EDR to change to Dre, to DRE. That would be an interesting one. But I do see that those mistakes, like generally most people, you give it 10 seconds max. Your first look is 10 seconds. What do I see? And then you have to make a decision quite quickly how much time more time you're gonna read it. And tiny things that are really simple to fix, like spelling mistakes and typos. I even think things like formatting can really put you off, as well, if you're not spacing things out to make it easy to read. Like with all of these things, you talked about certifications. Some people have 20 certifications. Well, let's make sure you don't take up a whole page and all of a sudden your resume is 5 pages because you've taken up a whole page of certifications. Like, let's keep them relevant, right? Nobody needs to know that you're a certified Novell engineer. Right? There's things that just aren't relevant anymore that you could probably drop off. And that resume is basically the first document and the first interaction you're going to have. So I think all of the things you talked about there are good points.
I would add one more. And one of the things I
Yeah.
always tell people that like when I do a resume review, I said, use the STAR methodology, right? What is the STAR methodology? There's a situation, a task, an action, and a result. Demonstrate that you were put in a situation, you did something, and based on that action you took, the result was 10% decrease in cycle time or, metrics available to board or something along those levels. And I think it goes not just for the people who are trying to get into security, but also people at the very senior level. You have to demonstrate the value that you're going to bring to the role. So there was a situation, and you've shown a proven track record of exceeding expectations, not even meeting expectations, because everyone else in the pool has met expectation. How do you exceed expectation?
I think that's great. We talk to a lot of candidates about making sure that the details they're putting under the job title, the usual stuff you get, job title, dates you were there, and the company you worked at, right? Then you've probably only got a handful of bullet points. So making sure that they're things that are actually, you can say, okay, that's a specific target. So I like the idea of the star methodology. So ensuring that you're following that gives you something that's brief and concise but very specific, and people can see the difference you made. um, I like to also say with people like that, you mentioned having a skill on your resume that you don't really know, and that's a big danger, right? Wherever you put on your resume, people are going to ask you questions about it. So putting things on there that you can't answer questions about is very dangerous, especially as you might speak to multiple people. Eventually somebody's probably going to ask you, so being on top of that is important. And so again, with the using the STAR methodology, making sure that those things are things you can talk about as well, because there's nothing worse when somebody puts something specific and then when you ask them, they're like, well, we did it as part of a team, and they can't explain it because their part wasn't really that involved. I'm sure that's stuff you've come across before, that classic.
Multiple times, yeah.
Yeah. Now, when they get so they've done the right thing, that resume's given them the opportunity. Then how, like for the, well, first off, is there anything, and you talked a little bit about networking, is there anything more that they can do outside of getting what helps them get their resume in front of the right person? What helps them get the interview, outside of just what's on that paper?
So one of the things that, I've encountered this in the last 2 weeks as well as over the progression of my career is there's a gap, right? How do you manage that gap? Or especially for the younger folks who are coming, where people are looking to make a career change, there's usually, okay, so how do I demonstrate? And I always tell people that, your credentials, the resume gets you through the door. What really attracts me when I was a hiring manager is, okay, have you demonstrated passion for your craft? How do you demonstrate passion for your craft? Well, you do that by saying, volunteering again for local organizations. Maybe it's a non-for-profit. Did you go and help them secure? Did you provide security awareness training? Did you help them with multi-factor authentication? Can you VPN into your house? So if you're, because I've talked to a lot of, entry level folks over the last couple of weeks, that's what's kind of in my mind. One of the
Yeah.
things I always tell people is you got to demonstrate passion. You don't have a job, you're looking for an internship. Harden your laptop at home. Can you VPN into your home? Do you have Metasploit? Can you, what have you done? Are you working on projects? Are you helping? Are you the help desk for your home? Do you have cameras that you hooked up to the cloud? Did you hack into your Ring doorbell, and now you're able to, send data to your private server that's in your basement that's being cooled by, those are things that I
Yeah.
think demonstrate that you're very serious about your craft. And I think in many cases, and that's one of the, you always see that, right? Even CISOs, people who are interviewing for CISO roles, they sometimes don't have the requisite skills. And the question is, well, I'm only in this role. And sometimes you have to take that extra step, reach out to someone who may be a peer or someone who's a senior leader in your organization, volunteer, and I'll tell you a brief story. Uh, Before I left Zurich, what I did was I didn't have any budget. My boss said, "You're not getting any more budget." I said, "I need a data analyst. I need a data scientist." He said, "You're not getting any budget." So what I did was I leveraged Zurich had as an internal system where they have people who could do second vents. So I had like 3 second vent folks on my team, and I brought them in. They were able to do the work. And as I was leaving, I trained one of my, I trained one of my direct reports to say, "Hey, this is your job. You're my deputy." He said, "I don't want it." So it ended up that the person who came in on a temporary assignment took over the team, and she's done a brilliant job. So I think, again, it's being proactive and finding creative ways of demonstrating your skills. And if you don't have those skills, how do you find ways to learn those skills given the parameters, within certain parameters that you face?
Yeah. Yeah. There's lots to learn from this. I think this is a great episode, and I think there's lots of stuff for people to pick up on. I've only got like one last question really for you, and it's the one that I know you've seen Larry's and you've probably seen a couple, so you know what's coming. So it's if you could go back and talk to early career Chris, what would the one piece of advice that you would give yourself?
I would summarize it with the three H's: be hungry, be humble, and stay healthy, right? So again, being in the CISO role, one of the things, there's this meme with the CISO, that the CEO's bed is this way, and the CISO's bed, the CFO's bed is this way. This is how all the C-level execs sleep, and the CISO's bed has never been touched.
Right.
I don't follow that paradigm. I think there has to be a balance, right? And in some cases, I think it was Jared Beeson who says there has to be work life I think he called it work-life integration. But basically, what he's saying is you have to find ways to, be there for your family. You have to find ways to get your job done, and you have to find ways to support the community. And I think that's key. I would say that would be one of the key pieces of advice. Do not sacrifice your personal relationship for your career, because your
Hmm.
career can go in many directions. Your personal relationships are always and will always be there. And then staying hungry is just always finding new ways. One of the things that I've always told my mentees is that, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. You should always be bringing down the average, right? So always be in a place where you're like literally depressing the average intelligence of the room. And then, humility, I think as we learn, sometimes we have to remember that there are those that come behind us that we have to, we have to mentor, we have to coach, we have to support, we have to guide. I think those are things that I would say to myself, no matter how bad things are, always try to support someone who's behind you or someone who's trying to get to where you are.
I think that's a really powerful message to yourself and probably to a lot of other people out there as well. The triple H's, that's where you want to be.
Triple H.
I think look at that. I put into practice the smartest person in the room. I actually used that at home not so long ago. My daughter's the youngest. She was the youngest in the preschool that she went to, and some of the other mums were holding back their kids for another year. And my wife was like, should we be doing that? And I was like, I don't think so. I think getting her out there, she's sociable, she's good with people. I think you put her in there, and she's a swimmer, right? She's not going to sink. She's a swimmer. We're there to support her. But I think putting her in there, and she won't be the smartest person. She's not going to be the oldest person in the room. She's not going to be the wisest, right? But she's going to learn off all the other kids that are. And so far, so good. But it took quite a lot of discussions with the wife to get that one through.
And it's funny because that sports analogy, it carries, right? My son plays
Mm.
football, and he's always been 2 years ahead. Meaning, if he's in sixth grade, he trains with the eighth graders. He's a freshman now. He's training with seniors, and I think it builds that leadership muscle, and it at the same time building the humility, because her ability to say, okay, I've been there. I've been the youngest. I've been the least experienced in the room. It's gonna that empathy automatically kicks in, right? So how do I support this person? How do I reach back and say, it's okay. I've been there, and the mentoring and the coaching piece comes in. So I think it's a brilliant strategy, and I wish more of us would do that, not just in the athletic arena, but in the professional arena.
Yep. Yeah, well, let's hope it plays out, because my wife will not be very happy if it doesn't. So far, so good. She just did her test results, and they've jumped a lot from when she joined. She's at much higher level of the percentile, so hopefully that's proof that I needed. Well, look, thank you very much, Chris. This has been amazing. It's lovely to get to know you, and hopefully we will cross paths soon in person at a conference. I'm sure that will happen. But also, I know I've got to connect you with a few people, and you can bug Alan for me as well.
Absolutely, will do. I'll see him, I think, on
Please.
the in 2 weeks for sure, and I'll let him know that he needs to get in touch with Chris.
Yes, please. Thanks, Chris. I really appreciate your time. Thank you
Awesome.
so much. And thank you for all of the
It's
listeners for the Route to CISO podcast. And look forward to getting your feedback. Anything you want to ask me, if you want to go and bug Chris on LinkedIn and ask him some questions, I'm sure he won't mind. If he can get to them all, I should state that. But he seems like the kind of guy that will be there to answer where and help wherever he can. So thank you so much, Chris.
absolutely my pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Route to CISO podcast. If there's something you really want me to ask on the next episode, or if you're a CISO who wants to inspire the next generation, please reach out. I'll leave a URL to my LinkedIn profile, and make sure you connect and message me there. We're always looking for feedback, so please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.